Hi, I'm David Delk, President of Man in the Mirror, and I'm honored to welcome you to Course 1, Foundations of our No Man Left Behind self-paced training. Each one of you hopefully has already received a Foundations Participants Guide as well as a No Man Left Behind book. So I just want to kind of orient you a little bit to what you could expect during your time together. In the Foundations Participants Guide, you're going to have a place where you can take notes during each session. There are 8 sessions, and each session is going to have some video teaching that you'll be able to refer to, and then out of that will come a time for you to discuss some questions about that teaching and how it applies in your church. And then, perhaps most important of all, you're going to have some time to do some application exercises. And this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where you take the truths that you've learned and apply them into the context of your church. We're excited about you being involved with this training, and so Pat Morley now wants to add his welcome to mine as you begin this journey together.
Hi, I'm Pat Morley, and we're so pleased to welcome you to the Foundations course of our No Man Left Behind self-paced training. Here at Man in the Mirror, we've been working with thousands of churches since 1991 to learn what works and what doesn't work in men's discipleship. We've honed these lessons into a biblical, research-based approach that we call the No Man Left Behind model. A special thank you to the many leaders who have contributed to the concepts we're about to present.
Well, welcome to our Man in the Mirror studios. At the beginning of each session, the 4 of us are going to take a little bit of time and talk about some of the issues and concepts from the preceding session and the next session. And so I'm really glad to be here with Pat Morley, David Delk, Charles Cooper, and I'm Brett Clemmer. And you know, guys, before we get started, I just thought I'd ask, why are you excited about these guys taking this course? Pat, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm excited because we see a lot of leaders ask the question, how hard could it be? And then it turns out to be very hard, and then they get discouraged. But it's not because men's discipleship doesn't work, it's because they don't have skills. So I'm excited because the No Man Left Behind model is a proven method of effectively discipling men in the local church.
Yeah, I'm very excited because I think people tend to be a little surprised about how much discipleship is actually going on in the church. And this is a very important way to discover that and also to maximize it.
That's good. I'm excited, Brett, because as we work with churches across the country, the churches where men are being discipled, where there's an atmosphere and an environment that celebrates men and that allows men to flourish, it's unbelievable some of the things that are happening. The impact in the communities, the way that families are being changed, education, business, not only locally but around the world, the impact is just incredible. And so when I think about leaders watching this video, being willing to make that commitment, I think about those downstream impacts of how God's going to use that literally for generations to come.
Oh, that's great. Well, you can see, guys, we're excited. We're honored that you would join us for this course. So let's get right into it now. We're going to go to this first session with David Delk and Pat Morley sharing with you the battle for men's souls.
Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome. So if you do have your Bible, good question about Bibles, open them, if you would, to Matthew 28, verse 18. So as you're turning in business, we have this idea, this axiom, your system is perfectly designed to produce the results you're getting. And so when you, of course, what we mean in business, if you're manufacturing automobiles, and every third car that rolls off the assembly line is missing a front right fender, your system's perfectly designed to produce that result. But we can also use that in our work with men, and we could say that in the church, whatever kinds of men you have sitting in the pews there on Sunday morning, your system is perfectly designed to produce that result. Your discipleship system is perfectly designed to produce that result. A little scary thought there, just to get started. Matthew 28:18-20, everybody knows this. Probably most of you could give this from memory, but Jesus says, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all peoples, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And I will be with you to the end of the age." And so, why are we here? Well, we are here because Jesus gave us these marching orders 2,000 years ago. They've never been rescinded, amended, altered in any way. And when you look around in the church, the numbers are not that pretty. So the first thing we see is that there are 113 million men in the United States, 15 years of age and older, 113 million men. 69 million of these men do not know Christ. Only 6 million of these men are involved in discipleship. 72 million children in the United States under the age of 18. And tonight, while we're here, tonight, an astonishing 33% of them are going to go to bed in a home without a biological father. Now, a lot of them are going to go to bed in a home with a single mom who's doing a great job, or they have a wonderful stepfather. But nevertheless, does it not make sense to ask, is there not something systemically wrong with a nation in which a third of its children don't live with their biological dads? There's just something wrong with that. And 40% of first marriages end in divorce, affecting about 1 million kids a year, and 33% of children are born out of wedlock. But look at this, 6 million men in discipleship. Just imagine a baseball team, 18 players, 9 players on each team, and imagine if only one of those 18 players understood the system that's perfectly designed to play baseball, the baseball manual, the rule book for baseball. Only 17 players didn't have a clue. And so the one guy that understood it would keep throwing this white ball at the other guy, and the other guy would say, "Stop, why do you keep throwing that thing at me?" Because he didn't understand the rules. And so a lot of guys that might be a little overdramatic, but a lot of guys are just about that confused about what it means to be a man, and especially about what it means to be a godly man. The numbers are just not that encouraging. So why are we here? For every 10 men in the average church, 9 of them are going to have children who leave the church. 6 will come back eventually. Only 8 will find their jobs satisfying. 6 will pay the minimums on their monthly credit cards. 5 will be involved in pornography. 4 of them will get divorced. Only 1 of them will have a Christian worldview. And all 10 of them are going to struggle to balance family and work. Not very encouraging, is it? And so why are we here? Well, we're here because we want to do something about that. Think about this. Would you agree with this? Can you visualize any way of ever getting the world right unless we get the church right? What do you think? Probably not going to happen, right? And if that's true, can you picture any way of ever getting the church right without getting families right? I mean, that's not going to happen, right? Well, can you picture any way of ever getting families right without getting marriages right? That's Family Systems Theory 101 stuff. You get the marriage right and the kids work out. Well, if that's true, can you picture any way of ever getting marriages right without getting men right? Maybe it's the women. Yeah, maybe it's the kids. No. I mean, every now and then you do hear about a woman who destroys her family, or a teenager that creates so much chaos that just rips the family apart. But really, generally, it's when you look around and you see almost any problem in the world, you'll find a man standing right next to the problem. You with me? And so, if you get men right, you will get marriages right. And if you get marriages right, you will get families right. And if you get the family right, you will get the church right. And if you get the church right, you will have an impact on the world. there is some sense in which it's really all about the men. All ministries in the church are important, but not if we neglect the men. Make sense? And so, a little bit about, why I'm here personally. In 1926, when my dad was 2 years of age, the youngest of 4 children, his father deserted the family. And so my dad grew up in a home with a single mom. She did a great job. But they were stuck in poverty, and my dad had to go to work when he was 6 years of age. So my dad could never remember a time when he didn't have to work. He worked on with his older brother. They got up at 3 o'clock every morning, worked on a bread truck, had 2 jobs, had a paper route after that. And my dad could never remember a time when he didn't work. And so when he became a man, he never felt the scratch of his father's whiskers. He never heard the sound of his father's voice reading him a bedtime story. He never heard a truck door slam at the end of the day, giving him the signal that his dad was about to re-enter his orbit. Never had his dad tussle his hair, never wrestled on the ground with his father. And so what it meant to be a man was unexampled to him. And so when my dad became a man, he had to decide if he would repeat the cycle or try to be a cycle breaker. And you can imagine how pleased I am that my dad wanted to break the cycle. But the problem is that he had to guess at how to be a dad to me. And so he made the decision with my mom that they would take their 4 young sons, I'm the oldest of 4 boys, and we would become part of a church. They said, well, we need to get some moral and religious instruction for these little guys. And so they joined the church, and my dad, because he had this incredible work ethic, they asked him if he would go to work. Well, he, I guess, thought that must be what it means to be a good Christian, so he responded to the challenge. And so by the time my dad was 40 years of age, he was the top layman in the church. I was in the 10th grade. My youngest brother was in the 3rd grade. But our church did not also have a vision to disciple my dad, a system to disciple my dad to be a godly man, a godly husband, and a godly father. And so something happened in the church. He just got burned out. And we left the church. As I said, I was in the 10th grade, and I telling you, men, as a result of that, our family was hit with such a force that we have never really fully recovered from it. At the time, we were doing pretty well as a family, but I quit high school in the middle of my senior year, and Dad maybe joined the Army. He wasn't going to let me hang around the house, but so I was out of there. And then my next brother, Robert, he followed in my footsteps. He quit high school. He eventually died of a heroin overdose. My next 2 brothers have struggled all of their lives with substance abuse and employment problems, and my dad just never saw it coming. He just never saw it coming. And, if he was here right now, he would say, well, I made that decision, and I take full responsibility for that decision. And, you got to love it. More men need to take more responsibility, not less, right? But I would just submit to you that the church is culpable in what happened in my family. My dad, if you look around the bend of that decision, my dad couldn't see around the bend of that decision. He didn't know what was going to happen. But the church did know or should have known. And the church has a responsibility to disciple men so that the wheels don't come off the wagon. And so why am I here? Well, I'm here because I will never know what it would be like to have grown up in a home where my father understood how to be a dad to me and a mentor to me. And it didn't work out for him. You know, we look at his sons. I'm not quite sure how I received the grace to break the cycle, but I did. Now, this story has a little bit of a, I mean, it sounds pretty depressing at this point. Actually, it is pretty depressing at this point, right? So this is a picture of my dad. He's the little guy in the lower left-hand corner when he was about a little over 2 years of age. And as you can see, no dad in the picture. The second picture, this is a picture of me when I was about the same age as my dad was in the first picture, and that's my dad. And look at that sweet face. This is not a man this is a man who was going to church for all the right reasons. He was there because he wanted to break the cycle. He wanted to do something different. The driving motive of my father's life was to not be like his dad, to not have the kind of result that his dad had. But it just didn't work out. Although he did have a beautiful 54-year marriage to my mom. They're both deceased now. This final picture is a picture of me with my son when my son is about the same age as I am in the top right picture, my dad in the top left. And my son and my daughter, they have given me permission to tell you that they can never remember a time when they didn't love Christ. And now they're both having children of their own, and you just see this beautiful thing. And my family lineage has been set on a whole new vector because of the gospel of Jesus. And how did that happen? My wife led me to Christ. God graciously grafted the gospel back into my family line through my wife's family line. She's the one that led me to Christ. And then it does have a happy end, and I was able to go back and lead my parents, both my mom and my dad, to Christ, back to Christ, I'm not sure. But anyway, they both made deathbed professions of faith. My brother, who's deceased, has received the Lord not too long before he died, and he was pretty well messed up, psychologically damaged goods, but he did receive the Lord, and he really understood what he did. And another brother has received the Lord. I have one who's kind of a holdout. So, Dad, we did break this cycle. And the reason that I'm here and that I'm so passionate about men's discipleship is because I know that in every one of your churches, you have men just like my dad. They're there for all the right reasons. No man fails on purpose. None of the men in your church got up this morning and thought to themselves, well, I wonder what I can do today to irritate my wife, neglect my kids, or let my boss down. But they're going to, right? And not only that, I'm also here because I'm pretty sure that all of you have men in your churches, not only like my dad, who are going to pull the plug on church, but you have guys like my grandfather who are going to pull the plug on their families because they have not been discipled to be godly men, godly husbands, and godly fathers. And I'm here because, for the same reason that you're here, because I believe we can change this. And we can change that by having a system to disciple these men. And that's the big idea for this session. And now to finish this session up, I'd like to bring up the president of Man in the Mirror, somebody that I love as my own brother, David Delk. David?
Thanks, Pat. To finish out our first session here, we want to kind of give you a quick overview of where we're headed. It's always good to know where you're headed before you start your journey. So we're going to go through a little overview of the No Man Left Behind model. Each one of you should have received a No Man Left Behind model card. And on the inside cover of this card is a description of the No Man Left Behind model, and it has everything filled in. In your session notes, you have one that's blank. If you would like to fill that in as we go along, feel free to do so. That's a great way to kind of learn it. And at the end of this training, we're hopeful that you could pass what we call the napkin test. And what we mean by that is we're hoping that maybe one day if you're talking to someone about discipling men and how that looks in your church, that you could just take a paper napkin and a pen and you'd be able to draw this model out for them and explain to them how No Man Left Behind can help as a discipleship process for men in the church. And so we're going to walk through this model. We're going to start at the foundations, and all of these things will be explained in greater detail as we move forward. But the first foundation we talk about in the model is that the portal priority is discipleship. Now, what do we mean by that? Basically, we mean that we need to make it very clear to men that all the opportunities, all the ministry activities, all the different things that guys can be engaged in our church, it's really about helping them grow in their faith in Jesus Christ. It's not a way of performing to get better. It's not a way of being a success, but it's about a faith relationship and growing in that dependence on Christ day by day. A second foundation that we have is what we call our man code. And this is the environment or the atmosphere that we create in our church for men. Often it's unspoken things that go into this man code. But basically, what is the sense that men get about how our church feels about men? Are men important? Are they valuable? Can they make a difference? Those kind of things go into our man code. And then the third foundation is what we call 3 strands of leadership. And here we're talking about a senior pastor, a passionate leader, and a leadership team. In the churches that we work with where we've seen this be successful, we've seen those 3 aspects of leadership working in partnership together to really create a system and a structure for men's discipleship in the church that can be sustained over the long term. And then we think about, okay, what is it we're actually trying to accomplish with men? Well, we want to take men